My sister-in-law showed up on my doorstep on a Wednesday morning with my 9-year-old nephew and a smile I didn't trust for a single second. "I need a favor," she said, nudging my nephew forward like she was returning something she'd borrowed. "Roland and I have a conference in Denver. Just a long weekend. You don't mind watching him, do you?" She didn't wait for an answer. She set his backpack at his feet, patted him once on the top of the head. Not a hug, not even eye contact, and turned back toward her car. "Oh, and Cora?" she said, not quite looking back at me. "Don't let him overthink things. He does that." The car was gone before I could process what had just happened. My nephew stood on my porch and watched the street for a moment after her taillights disappeared. His hands were wrapped so tightly around his backpack straps that the color had drained from his knuckles. Then he turned around, and the expression on his face was the kind that 9-year-olds should never have. Not sad, not scared, just certain. Like someone who had been waiting a long time for a moment to arrive and still wasn't sure they were ready for it. "Aunt Cora," he said softly. "She's not going to a conference. She's going to sign papers to take all the money Dad left me. She dropped me off here so I wouldn't be there to stop it." He reached into the front pocket of his backpack and pulled out a small green composition notebook, the kind you buy at any drugstore for $1. Its edges were soft and worn, as if someone small had been holding it close for a very long time. He held it out to me with both hands. "Dad gave me this when he got really sick. He said if anything ever felt wrong after he was gone, I should give it to someone who loves us. My name is Cora. I'm 34 years old, and I teach art to middle schoolers in Columbus, Ohio. My life before that Wednesday was not complicated. I graded projects. I bought groceries. I drove a sensible car and went to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings and called my mom every Sunday without fail. I want to be clear about that up front, because everything that followed felt, from the inside, like someone who had no idea what they were doing and was somehow doing it anyway. My brother Wade died 14 months before that Wednesday. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, found in March, gone by September. He was 41 years old. He worked in commercial construction his whole career. Big contracts, union work, the kind of job that builds things meant to last a long time. He was like that personally too, deliberate, careful. The kind of person who thought about the future long before most people start. He had taken out a life insurance policy when my nephew was born. He had a 401(n). He maxed out every year he could. He had a savings account that had been growing, quietly and steadily, for 9 years. When he realized he was dying, he took all of it, everything, and placed it into a protected trust for my nephew. $384,000. Every dollar my brother had built over a lifetime of careful work, set aside for his son, to be released when the boy turned 18. My sister-in-law was named temporary trustee. She was the boy's stepmother. She was present. It seemed at the time like the logical choice. Nobody knew what she had been doing with it. I made my nephew scrambled eggs and toast before I opened the notebook. He needed to eat. He needed to sit at a kitchen table and be treated like a child for a few minutes before I dealt with whatever was inside those soft green covers. He ate without saying much, watching me with dark, patient eyes that were so much like his father's. It sometimes stopped me cold. He had that same quality Wade had. The ability to simply wait, to let things unfold at the pace they needed to unfold and not push. My brother's handwriting was inside. Small and precise, the way it had always been. The writing of a man who spent his career filling out work orders and material lists. The first pages were organized and thorough. Account numbers, policy numbers, trust reference numbers. The name of the estate attorney he had hired, a woman named Miriam, along with her direct line. The name of the notary who had witnessed every signature. And at the top of the first page, underlined, twice, 384,000. Then I found the letter, folded into thirds and tucked inside the back cover. It was dated September. 2 weeks before he died. He wrote that he had concerns, not accusations. Just concerns, stated plainly in his precise, undramatic way. He had noticed unusual activity. Money moving in increments that didn't add up. Account inquiries that made him uneasy. He had done research and spoken to Miriam. And as a result, he had added something to the trust documents. A secondary consent clause. Any withdrawal or transfer above $5,000 required my written approval before it could be processed. He had put my name in the trust as a mandatory cosigner on large transactions. He had not told my sister-in-law this existed. I read that letter twice. Then I set it down and looked across the kitchen table at my nephew, who was watching me the way his father always did, quietly, without pressure, without asking for anything. "You already knew what was in there," I said. "Dad read it to me," he said. "All of it. He said it was my job to get it to the right person, and that I would know when the time came." He had been 9 years old when his father told him that. He had been carrying that notebook ever since. I called Miriam. She answered on the second ring and listened without interruption while I explained everything. My sister-in-law showing up, the Denver conference, the notebook, the letter. I read her the account numbers my brother had written down. There was a brief silence. Then she said, "Cora, I need you to pull up the trust portal. Wade set up access for you years ago. Do you have the login?" I did. I had set the password myself 3 years back and written it in a notes app I almost never opened. The account balance was $61,240. I stared at the screen. Read the number again. My brother had put $384,000 into that account. In 14 months, my sister-in-law had moved out more than $300,000 of it. The transaction log stretched back to the week after Wade's funeral. Careful, deliberate transfers, all sized below the $10,000 federal reporting threshold to avoid triggering automatic review, all labeled with phrases that looked legitimate at a glance. Estate administrative fees, property maintenance, legal consultation. 6 of the entries had Roland's full name in the memo field. No description, just his name. The most recent transfer had cleared 48 hours ago. A new one was pending. 72 hours from now. I called Miriam back. She was quiet for a moment, then steady in the way that people are when they've seen bad situations and know exactly where to stand inside them. The pending transfer was the final move. Once it cleared, recovery would require legal action across multiple financial institutions and months of litigation with no guarantee of success. The money that had already moved was structured in Roland's name in a way designed to be difficult to trace. If we didn't act within 72 hours, the last of my nephew's inheritance would disappear the same way the rest had. "We freeze the account tonight," Miriam said. "And Cora, do not tip her off. Behave as though everything is completely normal." That evening, my sister-in-law texted to check in. Just a short message. "Is he okay?" I put my phone on the counter and made myself breathe before I picked it up again. Then I typed, "He's great. We made dinner together. He's watching a movie and seems really relaxed. Enjoy Denver, you too." She sent a thumbs up. That was the entire conversation. I set my phone face down and went back to the kitchen table, where Miriam and I had work to do. The next 60 hours were unlike anything I had experienced in my life. Miriam filed the emergency petition to freeze the estate accounts that same night. Over the following 2 days, we pulled every transaction record from the trust portal and cross-referenced each one against the secondary consent clause my brother had added. Every withdrawal above $5,000. Every transfer above that threshold. Every movement of money that should have required my written approval and didn't. There were 43 of them. Not one had my signature. Every single one was a clear violation of the trust document my brother had signed in front of a notary 9 months before he died. My nephew helped in ways I didn't expect. He sat at the kitchen table with me every morning, focused and steady, identifying which pages of the notebook were in his father's handwriting versus pages his dad had printed from somewhere else. He remembered specific details, conversations, dates, the name of the notary's office, a phone call his father had deliberately let him listen to. His memory was precise in a way that went well beyond what I expected from a child. Wade had talked to him like a partner, had explained things not in technical terms, but in terms that a kid could hold on to over 14 months. My nephew had held on to all of it, faithfully, without telling anyone. I thought about my brother constantly during those 60 hours. I thought about him lying in a hospital room, exhausted, running out of time, writing account numbers in a green notebook, adding an oversight clause to a legal document, making sure my name was embedded in the trust where it would matter long after he was gone. He had known something was wrong, and he hadn't had enough time left to stop it himself, so he had built a mechanism designed to stop it after him. He had trusted me to be part of that mechanism. He had trusted his 9-year-old son to carry the first piece of it across a city in a backpack and put it into the right hands. Miriam arranged for a probate court representative to attend the Denver meeting without alerting my sister-in-law or Roland. The estate accounts were frozen 24 hours before the scheduled transfer was set to process. The bank automatically flagged the pending transaction as under fraud review and blocked it from clearing. My sister-in-law and Roland walked into that conference room, not knowing any of that. They were early. They were dressed well. They shook hands with the financial planner and sat down and opened their folders. And from everything I heard afterward, they had the settled, easy confidence of two people who believe the hard work is already finished. The financial planner set a document on the table before the meeting formally began. It was the probate court fraud notice. It listed every unauthorized transfer, the emergency account freeze, and the active investigation. It carried the court seal, Miriam's signature, and mine, the cosigner my brother had quietly made sure to include 2 weeks before he died. Roland read through it once. He looked up at my sister-in-law. Then, without a pause, without a single moment of hesitation, he said he hadn't understood the nature of the transfers. He said he had trusted her to manage the estate properly. He said he had no reason to believe that anything was irregular. He said all of this clearly, in complete sentences, the way someone does when they've had time to think about exactly what they would say if something like this ever happened. My sister-in-law sat very still. Then she asked to make a phone call. The investigation ran for several months. $312,000 was recovered through a combination of account reversals and a civil judgment filed against both of them. The remaining amount was still being actively pursued. But Miriam told me the documentation made it a strong case. Roland was pulled into the investigation as well. His name was on 6 transactions, and the claim that he simply hadn't known turned out not to hold up once the financial planner provided a detailed account of their full meeting history together. The court removed my sister-in-law as trustee. A professional fiduciary with no personal connection to anyone involved was appointed to oversee the trust until my nephew turns 18. Every recovered dollar was placed back into the account, protected and secured for exactly the purpose my brother had written down on page 1 of a green notebook. College, a first home, a safety net, a future. When the court asked about my nephew's living situation, I had already spoken to Miriam about it. Guardianship is not a fast process. There are home visits and background checks and paperwork that feels like it will never end. I am not going to pretend it was easy or smooth, but it moved, steadily, in one direction, and eventually it was done. My nephew has a real bedroom now, a dresser with 3 full drawers and a hook behind the door for his jacket. His baseball cleats are by the back door. His drawings are on the refrigerator. Careful, detailed pencil work, the same kind of quiet precision his dad had. He has friends whose names I know, and whose parents I've talked to at weekend games. He laughs easily, which is not something I was entirely sure I would ever hear freely from him. He seems, by every measure I know how to read, like a kid who feels safe. The green notebook sits on his bookshelf, between a library book about the solar system and a participation trophy from his first season of baseball. I asked him once if he wanted to put it somewhere private. He thought about it for a moment and said no. He said he liked being able to see it. I understood that. His father had made something with the time he had left. Not a goodbye, exactly. More like a bridge. Built carefully and quietly, without telling anyone who might have tried to take it apart. He had trusted me to walk across it when the moment came. He had trusted his son to carry the first piece of it forward and know exactly who to hand it to. They both came through. I think about that a lot, what it takes to plan something like that when you are running out of time. To lie in a hospital bed thinking not about what is happening to you, but about what will happen after. To write account numbers in a dollar store notebook, fold a letter into the back cover, and hand it to your child with careful instructions, knowing that the right people will find each other. They did. What would you have done if someone handed you something like that? If a child looked at you and put everything into your hands because their father had trusted you enough to write your name into a document 2 weeks before he died? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.